all you deserve," my mother whispered, pressing a $500 check into my hand while my sister posed for photos behind a $250,000 wedding reception. I was standing in the corner of a Ritz-Carlton ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, 200 guests, Moët on every table, filet mignon going cold on fine china. And me, in an $89 black dress from Nordstrom Rack, holding a thin envelope that was supposed to be my mother's answer to the question I'd asked 20 minutes earlier. "Will you help me and Marcus the way you helped Meredith?" But the $500 wasn't what made me leave that night. It was what she said to the man standing next to me. The man who'd later help me build everything she swore I'd never have. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you genuinely connect with this story. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it where you are? My name is Sienna Hewitt. I'm 30 years old now. But let me take you back 2 years. To a Saturday in June, inside a ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton in Hartford, Connecticut, the night I stopped trying to earn my mother's love. I grew up in Glastonbury, Connecticut. The kind of town where every lawn is trimmed to the same height, and every family portrait hangs in the same spot above the fireplace. 4-bedroom colonial on a tree-lined street. 2-car garage, a golden retriever named Baxter. From the outside, the Hewitts looked like a catalog family. From the inside, we ran on a ranking system. My older sister Meredith was the blueprint. Straight A student, captain of the varsity lacrosse team, early admission to Johns Hopkins. She moved through life like someone who'd been told since birth that the world was hers, and she believed it, because our mother made sure she did. Diane Hewitt, 58, former surgical nurse who'd once dreamed of medical school but never applied. She poured every ounce of that unfinished ambition into Meredith like concrete into a mold. And Meredith hardened into exactly what our mother wanted. A dermatologist with a private practice, a boyfriend from the right family, and a smile that photographed well at holiday parties. Then there was me. I was the one who drew instead of studied, the one who won an art contest sophomore year and brought the ribbon home to a silent dinner table. My mother looked at it the way you'd look at a coupon you'd never use. "That's nice, Sienna, but creativity is a luxury. Stability is a responsibility." That ribbon went into my bedroom. Meredith's lacrosse trophies, her honor roll certificates, her Johns Hopkins acceptance letter, those lived in the glass display cabinet in the living room. You could see it from the front door. Guests always noticed. That was the point. One daughter who would save lives. One daughter who drew pictures. Guess which one got mentioned at Thanksgiving? I graduated from UConn with a degree in communications and a GPA that nobody in my family ever asked about. Landed a job as a junior marketing coordinator at a small agency in Hartford. Bridwell and Partners. 11 employees. An office above a sandwich shop on Asylum Street. Salary, $38,000 a year before taxes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The problem was the car. Hartford's public transit doesn't reach the suburbs where I needed to meet clients. I needed a vehicle, but my credit history was thin. A student card with a $2,000 limit and 6 months of on-time rent. Not enough for an auto loan on my own. So my parents co-signed. $18,000 for a 2019 Honda Civic with 62,000 miles. Monthly payment, $312. On paper, it was a generous thing to do. In practice, it was a leash. My mother kept the co-sign agreement in her bedside drawer the way some people keep a loaded weapon. Every Thanksgiving, every phone call where I mentioned wanting something different, every time I pushed back on anything, the leash tightened. "You still owe us for that car, Sienna. Don't bite the hand that co-signed your loan." My father, Gerald, 60, retired sales manager, the kind of man who reads the newspaper to avoid conversations, would sit across the table and say nothing. He'd look at his plate. He'd chew slowly. And when my mother was finished, he'd say, "Your mother has a point," without ever specifying which one. The Honda Civic sat in our parents' driveway every holiday, right next to the BMW X5 they'd bought Meredith as a medical school graduation gift. 2 cars, side by side, one earned, one bestowed. both telling the truth about where we stood. I met Marcus Calloway at a coffee shop on Pratt Street, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and a chalkboard menu that changes daily. He was sitting by the window with a laptop open to Figma, a half-finished cold brew sweating beside his elbow, and a calm about him that I mistook for indifference until he looked up and smiled. Marcus was 29, UX designer, freelance. He'd been on his own since 18. Parents divorced when he was 14, Mom moved to Florida, Dad drifted into a bottle. He put himself through community college, taught himself design, and built a client list one cold email at a time. His emergency fund was small, but it existed, which is more than most people I knew could say. What I loved about Marcus wasn't that he was ambitious in the way my mother understood ambition, corner offices and titles. He was ambitious in the way that mattered. He showed up, every single day, for his work, for me, for the life we were quietly building in a one-bedroom apartment with secondhand furniture and a budget spreadsheet taped to the refrigerator. My mother found out about Marcus 3 months in. Her response arrived over Sunday pot roast. A freelancer? She set her fork down like she was placing evidence on a table. So neither of you has a real job. That same month, Meredith got engaged to Dr. Trent Cole, orthopedic surgeon, old money family from Darien, Ferragamo loafers, the kind of jaw that belongs on a campaign poster. My mother hosted the engagement dinner herself. Champagne, catered, 40 guests in the backyard. Meredith found a partner who matches her ambition, my mother told me at that dinner, glancing at Marcus across the yard. You found a partner who matches your situation. Marcus heard it. He didn't flinch, but I saw his jaw tighten the way it does when he's swallowing something he'll never forget. 5 weeks before Meredith's wedding, Marcus proposed. It wasn't a rooftop. It wasn't a ring in a champagne glass. It was a Tuesday night in our apartment. Pasta on the stove, rain against the window. And he said, I don't have a speech. I just know I want this to be my life. You. This. Us. The ring was a simple solitaire he'd saved for over 4 months. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We told my family the following Sunday. Meredith smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. My father said, That's wonderful, sweetheart, and went back to his newspaper. My mother looked at the ring for exactly 1 second, then turned to Meredith. Have you confirmed the florist for the orchids? The wedding planning was already a freight train, the Ritz-Carlton Hartford. A planner flown in from New York. Flowers imported from Ecuador. Not roses, orchids, because Meredith said roses were predictable. The budget had crossed $250,000, and my mother spoke about it the way people talk about renovations. Necessary, overdue, an investment in the right things. My role in the wedding was assigned, not discussed. I would manage the guest book table. The guest book table, a small podium by the entrance, away from the ceremony, away from the reception, away from every photograph. I'd greet guests, hand them a pen, and smile. Meredith texted me the week before. You can bring Marcus. Just don't let him talk to Trent's colleagues about freelancing. It's not the same world. I stared at that text for a long time. I should have said something. I didn't. The wedding was in 5 weeks. I didn't know yet that it would be the last time I'd sit at my family's table. The Ritz ballroom looked like it had been designed to remind everyone in the room exactly how much money was being spent. Crystal chandeliers hung low over tables dressed in white linen. Each centerpiece was a sculpted tower of white peonies and trailing jasmine, flanked by diptyque candles that filled the air with tuberose and warm cedar. A string quartet played Pachelbel in the corner. 200 guests in cocktail attire, place settings with gold-rimmed chargers, 3 forks per person. I arrived early, as instructed. My dress was black, simple, cap-sleeved, purchased online from Nordstrom Rack during a 70% off clearance event. $89. I'd tried it on 3 times in our bathroom mirror before deciding it was fine. It was always going to be fine. Nobody was looking at me. Meredith floated through the ceremony in custom Vera Wang, a cathedral-length veil trailing behind her like a promise the world had already agreed to keep. She looked beautiful. She always did. My mother stood in the front row in champagne silk, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, and I thought, she's never looked at me the way she's looking at Meredith right now. Not once. After the ceremony, I took my place at the guest book table. I smiled. I handed out pens. I said, "Congratulations," 47 times to people who didn't know my name. One of my mother's cousins, Aunt Deborah, 70s, pearls, 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio deep, squinted at me as she signed. "Oh, you're the other one?" I kept smiling. "I'm Sienna." Right. Diane always talks about Meredith. She's the star of the family, isn't she?" Marcus was seated at table 14, last row, near the service entrance, next to 2 of Trent's distant work acquaintances who spent the night talking about golf handicaps. The toasts were finished. Meredith and Trent had their first dance, Sinatra naturally, and the room had that loose, champagne-warm haze that settles over expensive parties when the bill is already paid. I'd left the guest book table to find Marcus. I wanted to sit with him, eat something, maybe steal one quiet moment before the night ended. But I only made it halfway across the ballroom before my mother appeared at my elbow. "Sienna, come here." She pulled me toward a corner near the bar, not quite private. 3 or 4 guests at a nearby high-top table could hear us if they listened. A waiter was restocking champagne flutes 2 feet away. "I know you and Marcus are planning something," she said. Her tone was the same one she used when I was 12, and she caught me drawing instead of doing algebra homework. Disappointed, but unsurprised. "You asked me last week if we'd help with your wedding. So here." She pressed a white envelope into my hand. Standard size. Light. I opened it. A check. $500. Written in my mother's neat cursive. Memo line. "Wedding contribution. Sienna." I looked up. She was watching my face the way a scientist watches a test subject. "That's all you deserve." She said it softly, barely above the music. But the waiter heard. I saw his hand pause on the champagne flute. A woman at the high-top table glanced over, then quickly looked away, the way people do when they've witnessed something they wish they hadn't. $500. My sister got $250,000. I got $500. And a memo line that made it official. I folded the check, put it in my clutch, looked my mother in the eye. I didn't say a word. And I think that scared her more than anything I could have said. I walked back to table 14. Marcus saw my face before I sat down. He reached for my hand under the table. "What happened?" "Later," I said. "Not here." But here found us anyway. My mother appeared at our table 10 minutes later. She'd had another glass of champagne, not enough to slur, but enough to remove whatever thin membrane of restraint had kept her cruelty semi-private until now. She stood at the head of the table and 6 people I'd never met looked up at her. She looked at Marcus. Not at me, at him. "I hope you're not expecting us to fund your wedding too." She smiled, the kind of smile that's really a blade. "We don't invest in dead ends." The table went silent. A man in a Brooks Brothers blazer stared at his water glass. A woman beside him suddenly found her napkin fascinating. Trent's college roommate, seated 2 chairs down, opened his mouth, then closed it. Marcus didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. But I watched the tendon in his neck pull tight, the way a guitar string does right before it snaps, and something in me cracked open. Not broke, cracked open. The difference matters. I could take it when she ranked me. I could take the glass cabinet, the guest book table, the $89 dress, the $500 check. But this man who built his life from nothing, who never asked my family for a single thing, did not deserve to be gutted in public by a woman who didn't know his name until 3 months ago. I stood up, leaned close to Marcus. "We're leaving." He nodded. No hesitation. As we crossed the parking lot, gravel crunching under our shoes, I said the first clear thing I'd said all night. "I need to refinance that car loan. Tomorrow." Marcus opened the passenger door of the Honda Civic for me. I already have the paperwork pulled up on my laptop. By 7 the next morning, my phone had 12 missed calls from my father, 3 text messages from Meredith, and a silence from my mother that was louder than all of them combined. Gerald, please call us. Your mother is upset. Meredith, you left early and everyone noticed. People were asking where you went. You ruined my reception, Sienna. I hope you're happy. Meredith again? This was supposed to be my day. And my mother? Nothing. Not a word. Because Diane Hewitt didn't chase. She waited for you to come back apologizing. I didn't reply to any of them. Marcus and I sat at our kitchen table, the small one from Target that wobbled on the left side, with his laptop between us and 2 cups of coffee going cold. On the screen, refinancing options for the auto loan. My credit score glowed in the corner of the browser. 680. Borderline. Enough to qualify at a higher interest rate, but enough. If we go through a credit union, we can get 7.2%, Marcus said, scrolling. It's higher than what your parents got, but the loan transfers entirely to your name. They come off the title. Clean break. A clean break. The words sat in the air like something holy. I looked at the number. $18,000, give or take. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Not as debt. As a chain. A chain my mother rattled every time I stepped out of line. And here was Marcus, at 7 in the morning, with paperwork already pulled up, showing me exactly how to cut it. I stared at the 680 on the screen and thought, why did I let an $18,000 loan keep me in a family that priced me at $500? Have you ever realized that the thing trapping you was smaller than you thought? That the lock was cheaper than the cage? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. Within 72 hours, I'd have a plan. Within 30 days, I'd have a new city. 2 weeks after the wedding, the story had already been written. Just not by me. My Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, the quiet one who sends birthday cards with $10 bills inside and never takes sides, called me on a Wednesday afternoon. She didn't say hello first. She said, I thought you should know what your mother's telling people. The narrative, as Diane had constructed it, was clean and efficient. Sienna left the wedding in a jealous rage. She couldn't handle seeing Meredith happy. She's always been the difficult one. We gave her money and she threw it back in our faces. Every family dinner, every phone call with cousins, every conversation at the grocery store with neighbors who'd known us since we were in car seats. The story spread the way my mother intended. Quietly, thoroughly, like wallpaper paste. Then came Instagram. Meredith posted from her honeymoon in Amalfi, standing on the bow of a chartered boat, Dior sunglasses pushed up on her head, Trent's arm around her waist, the Tyrrhenian Sea glittering behind them. Caption: grateful for family who shows up. Some people can't handle other people's blessings. 47 comments, hearts, fire emojis. You're so graceful about it, Mer. Their loss, babe. Living your best chapter. I saw it because a college friend screenshot it and sent it to me with a single question mark. I stared at the photo for 10 seconds. Then I closed the app, opened my laptop, and went back to the pitch email I was drafting for a potential client, a small bakery in East Austin that needed help with social media. Aunt Patricia texted once more that week. Short. I saw what happened at the wedding. Your mother was wrong. That's all I'll say. Not an ally, just a witness. Sometimes that's enough to keep you sane. They can have the story, I told Marcus that night. I'll have the results. The phone rang on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the wedding, 9 days after I'd submitted the refinancing application to a credit union in Hartford. I saw the name on the screen and felt my stomach drop the way it does when you hear a fire alarm in a building you thought was safe. Mom. She never called. She summoned. She waited. She let silence do the work. The fact that she was calling meant she'd heard something she didn't like. I understand you're planning to move. Her voice was flat, measured, the tone she used with pharmaceutical reps who didn't bring the right samples. Someone told me you're looking at apartments out of state. I said nothing. Let her fill the space. If you leave, Sienna, don't expect us to keep co-signing that loan. I'll call the bank Monday morning. You can't unilaterally remove yourself from a co-signed loan, Mom. That's not how it works. A pause. I'd never cited a fact back at her before. It landed like a stone in still water. Excuse me. The loan is a binding agreement. You can't withdraw your name without the lender's consent and a refinance. Which? I kept my voice level, professional, the way Marcus had coached me the night before. Is exactly what I've already started. The silence on her end was different this time. Not the silence of power, the silence of someone who reaches for a lever and finds it gone. 5 days later, the credit union approved the refinance. Interest rate, 7.2%, higher than the original. I didn't care. The loan transferred to my name alone. Diane and Gerald Hewitt were removed from the title entirely. I sent one email. Mom, Dad. The auto loan has been refinanced under my name only. You're no longer on it. Thank you for the original cosign. Sienna professional. Brief. No emotion. The leash was cut. 30 days after the wedding, I packed everything I owned into the Honda Civic. It didn't take long. 2 suitcases. 1 box of marketing textbooks and dog-eared copies of Building a Story Brand and Made to Stick. My laptop. A folder of client samples I'd built at Bridwell and Partners. A cactus Marcus had given me on our first anniversary that had somehow survived 2 Connecticut winters on a windowsill. I'd put in my notice at the agency the week before. My boss, a decent man named Phil who wore the same blue Oxford every Tuesday, shook my hand and said, "You're better than this place, Sienna. I'm sorry I couldn't pay you enough to prove it." He wrote me a reference letter on company letterhead that same afternoon. Marcus had already transitioned his freelance clients to fully remote. His laptop worked the same in Austin as it did in Hartford. That was the beauty of his work, and the thing my mother never understood about it. It traveled. We chose Austin because Marcus had done the math. No state income tax. Cost of living 30% lower than Hartford County. A startup ecosystem that welcomed small operators. A creative scene that didn't require a pedigree. Our bank account the morning we left. $4,200, combined, everything we had. My father sent a text as we crossed the Pennsylvania state line. "Are you safe?" I waited until we stopped for gas outside Roanoke to reply. One word, yes. Nothing from my mother, nothing from Meredith. Just Gerald, asking the question he should have been asking for 28 years. The interstate stretched ahead of us. I-81 south, then I-40 west, then the long, flat approach into Texas. In the rearview mirror, Connecticut shrank to nothing. Ahead, a green highway sign. Austin, 312 miles. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "Ask me in a year." Our first apartment in Austin was a studio on East Riverside Drive, 480 square feet of warped hardwood floors, an air conditioner that rattled like a diesel engine, and a window that looked out onto a parking lot where someone had spray-painted "Dream Big" on a dumpster. Rent, $1,100 a month. We didn't have a bed. Not at first. Marcus borrowed an air mattress from a guy he'd met in an online design forum who happened to live in East Austin. That first night, we lay on it side by side, listening to the AC shudder through its cycle, and I stared at the ceiling. Water stain in the corner, shaped like a lopsided heart, and the thought came uninvited. What if my mother was right? I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have to. Marcus rolled over and said, "It'll get better, it has to. We didn't drive 1,700 miles to quit." I started working the next day. Barista at a coffee shop on South Congress, $12 an hour plus tips. The owner was a woman named Denise who made her own oat milk and called everyone sugar. I poured lattes from 6 to 2, then came home, showered, and sat at the kitchen counter, which was also our dining table, which was also my desk, and opened Upwork. The first month, I landed 3 gigs. Social media management for a nail salon in Round Rock, $400. A flyer design for a food truck called Big Tony's Brisket, $250. An email campaign for a yoga studio in South Lamar, $750. Total freelance income. Month 1, $1,400. Combined with barista tips and Marcus's freelance UX work, we cleared rent. Barely. Groceries came from H-E-B, and I learned that rice, beans, and optimism could stretch further than I'd ever imagined. Freedom tastes different when you can't afford furniture. In March, 3 months into Austin, I signed my first real contract. Not an Upwork gig. A real client, with a real scope of work and a signed agreement. A boutique hotel on South Congress called The Wren. 12 rooms, exposed brick, a rooftop bar that served mezcal cocktails to tourists who wanted to feel like locals. The owner needed a full brand refresh. New logo, social media strategy, website copy. Fee, $3,500. I was so excited I called Marcus from the parking lot and nearly cried. 3 weeks later, the owner, a man named Derek who wore linen shirts and changed his mind the way other people change socks, killed the project. He didn't like the color palette. Then he didn't like the font. Then he didn't like the vibe. He canceled the contract, paid 50% as the kill clause required, and moved on to a buddy from LA who'd do it for free. $1,750. 3 weeks of work. $200 out of pocket for Canva Pro and stock photography. I sat on the concrete steps outside our apartment building that evening, holding a bottle of water, staring at the traffic on Riverside Drive. Marcus came out with a cup of coffee. The good stuff, from Denise's shop, which he'd bought with the last of his tip money from helping her rearrange the back storage. "Hey," he said, sitting down. "Your credit score hit 710 last month. The refinance is working." He paused. "Also, remember that woman at the cafe? The one who asked about your food truck campaign for Big Tony's? Lorraine something? She left her card. Said you should call." "Who's Lorraine?" "I don't know yet, but she said your Big Tony's work was the best local campaign she'd seen in 6 months." I took the card, held it between 2 fingers like it might dissolve. Lorraine Voss, marketing consultant, Austin, Texas. I pinned the $1,750 check from Derek to the kitchen wall with a magnet, wrote next to it in Sharpie, "First real payment, first real lesson." I didn't go looking for Meredith's Instagram. The algorithm found me. One night in April, sitting cross-legged on the air mattress because we still hadn't bought a couch, I was scrolling through industry hashtags for hospitality marketing ideas when the app decided I might also enjoy a photo of my sister standing in her new kitchen. Colonial-style house, 4 bedrooms, Calicotta marble island, brass pendant lights, fresh white subway tile backsplash that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The caption read, "Dream home with my dream man." The house was in West Hartford, bought with the $250,000 wedding gift as a down payment plus a mortgage Trent had co-signed. My parents' investment, appreciating nicely. Or so the caption suggested. I started to close the app, then stopped. Something was off. The post had fewer likes than Meredith's usual content. She had nearly 200,000 followers, mostly patients and lifestyle-adjacent accounts. And buried in the comments, a friend had written, "Where's Trent? Haven't seen you two together in a while?" Meredith's reply, "He's busy saving lives." The exclamation marks were doing a lot of heavy lifting. I closed the app, opened my laptop, pulled up the pitch email I was drafting for a bed and breakfast in Dripping Springs that needed help with their booking funnel. Meredith's kitchen had a 6-burner wolf range. I was sitting at an IKEA lac table I'd assembled wrong twice. The legs were slightly uneven, so my laptop tilted 1 degree to the left, always. Every email I'd sent for 4 months had been written at a slant. I didn't know it then, but Meredith's dream home was already worth $60,000 less than what they'd paid for it. The Connecticut housing market had softened, and Trent wasn't busy saving lives. He was busy ruining theirs. May was the month that nearly broke us. 5 months in Austin. The numbers on my banking app read like a countdown. $1,800 in checking. Rent due in 6 days. $1,100, which left $700 for everything else. Groceries, gas, phone bill, the internet we needed to keep freelancing. The Canva Pro subscription I couldn't cancel without losing access to my client templates. Then Marcus lost his biggest client, a fintech startup in San Francisco that had been paying him $4,000 a month for UX work, sent a 2-line email. Restructuring our design budget. Effective immediately, we're pausing all contractor agreements. Thanks for everything. Thanks for everything. The corporate equivalent of a shrug. That month, our combined income dropped 40%. We ate rice and black beans 4 nights in a row. Marcus picked up a one-day gig helping Denise build shelving at the coffee shop. $200 cash, paid same day. I took on a rush project for a real estate agent in Pflugerville who needed Instagram content. $300 for 15 posts. I made them in one night, fueled by instant coffee and a feeling that hovered somewhere between determination and dread. One evening, while Marcus was on a call with a potential new client, I walked into the bathroom, shut the door, turned on the faucet, and cried. Not the graceful kind. The kind where your whole body folds and the sound that comes out doesn't sound like you. I pressed my face into a towel and let it happen. The bathroom was small, white tile, yellowed grout, a faucet that dripped every 3 seconds. When I came out, Marcus was still on his call. I washed my face, opened my email. One new message. From Lorraine Voss. Your food truck campaign was surprisingly sharp. I've been watching your recent work. Come to my office Thursday. I might have something. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. I didn't know it yet. But that Thursday meeting would change the trajectory of everything. Lorraine Voss worked out of a 3rd-floor office in a co-working space on Rainy Street. The kind of building where every suite had a different startup name on the door and the communal kitchen always smelled like someone's overambitious pour-over. Her office was small, immaculate, and deliberately spare. A standing desk, 2 chairs, a single orchid on the windowsill, and nothing on the walls except a framed cover of Ad Age from 2014 with her name in the subheading. She was 52, silver bob cut with surgical precision, navy blazer over a white tee, no jewelry except a Cartier tank watch on her left wrist that caught the overhead light every time she moved her hand, which was often because Lorraine talked the way she worked. Direct, fast, no wasted motion. Your Big Tony's brisket campaign increased their weekend foot traffic by 34%, she said before I'd fully sat down. I called Tony. He confirmed the numbers. That's not luck. She paused. Looked at me the way a contractor looks at a load-bearing wall, assessing what it can hold. But your pricing is amateur. You charged $800 for work worth $4,000. You're not doing yourself any favors by being cheap. You're telling clients you don't believe in your own value. The words hit closer to home than she knew. Here's what I'm offering. I have 2 hospitality clients. A boutique hotel in the Domain and a bed and breakfast out in Hill Country. Both need social media strategy and brand refreshes. I'll refer you if, and only if, you come back to me with a proper proposal, proper pricing, and a registered LLC. Not a freelancer with an Upwork profile. A business. She checked her watch. You have 48 hours. I stood. My hands were shaking. Thank you, Lorraine. Don't thank me, earn it. I don't refer sloppy work. I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and called Marcus. I need you to help me register an LLC tonight. That night, Marcus and I sat at the wobbly IKEA table with his laptop open to the Texas Secretary of State website. The filing form for a limited liability company was surprisingly simple. Name, registered agent, address, purpose. The fee was $300. We had $700 in the account after rent. That's almost half of what we have left, I said. It's an investment, Marcus said. Not an expense. I typed the name into the field, Hewitt Creative LLC. Marcus looked at me. You're using your family name? It's my name too, and I'm going to make it mean something different. He didn't argue. He clicked submit. $300 to file. More than half of what my mother thought I was worth at Meredith's wedding. Over the next 48 hours, I built 2 proposals on Google Docs. One for the Domain Hotel, one for the Hill Country Bed and Breakfast. I priced each project at $4,500. My fingers hesitated over the numbers. Lorraine's voice echoed. You're telling clients you don't believe in your own value. I kept the price. I emailed both proposals to Lorraine at 11:47 p.m. on Saturday, 13 minutes before her deadline. Monday morning, Client 1. The Finch Hotel in the Domain? Replied. Let's do it. Tuesday afternoon. Client 2. Bluebell B&B in Wimberley. Replied. Can we start next week? $9,000 in the pipeline. More than I'd earned in any single month of my life. I quit the barista job that Friday. Denise hugged me over the espresso machine and said, "Go be somebody, sugar. And send me a client if you can." I printed the LLC certificate at an office depot on Lamar Boulevard and pinned it to the kitchen wall, right next to the $1,750 check from the canceled hotel project. My wall of evidence, not of failure, of becoming. Things didn't get easy after that. They got fast. By August, 3 months after filing the LLC, Hewitt Creative had 4 clients. Monthly revenue, $22,000. I hired my first contractor, a copywriter named Becca who'd just moved to Austin from Nashville and wrote headlines the way some people write poetry. Clean, sharp, inevitable. I paid her fairly because I remembered what it felt like when someone didn't. October. 7 clients. Lorraine introduced me to the Austin Hospitality Alliance, a network of hotel owners, restaurant groups, and tourism boards who met quarterly over overpriced salads at a place on West 6th. She told me to prepare a 5-minute presentation on social media ROI for boutique properties. Don't charm them, she said. Show them numbers. I stood in front of 40 people in a borrowed blazer and showed them numbers. My hands shook for the first 90 seconds. Then the data took over. Big Tony's foot traffic increase. The Finch Hotel's 200% rise in Instagram engagement. Bluebell B&B's direct booking revenue up 41% in 2 months. By the time I finished, 3 people had left their business cards on my chair. December. Revenue for the month. $38,000. I hired a second contractor, a graphic designer named Will. We moved out of the studio on East Riverside into a 2-bedroom apartment on South Lamar. It had a separate room I could use as an office, a real desk, a real chair, and a bed, queen size, solid oak frame from Article, that we assembled together on a Sunday afternoon while Marcus played Coltrane on a Bluetooth speaker. Gerald sent an email. "Merry Christmas, Sienna. I hope Austin is treating you well." I replied, "The first time in 6 months." "It is." "Merry Christmas, Dad." Short, but not closed. Not anymore. Every invoice I sent felt like a sentence in a letter I was writing to my future self. 1 year in Austin. Hewitt Creative. 12 retainer clients. 2 full-time employees besides myself, and a revenue number I had to read 3 times on the spreadsheet before I believed it. $480,000. Gross. Not profit. I want to be honest about that. After salaries, software, contractor fees, and taxes, the take-home was a fraction. But the trajectory was real. And for the first time in my life, the graph was pointing up because of something I'd built with my own hands. We leased a small office, 800 square feet on East 6th Street, a converted storefront with exposed ductwork, polished concrete floors, and a glass front door. Marcus designed the logo himself. Hewitt Creative in clean sans serif. Slate gray on white. We had it printed on the glass. The first morning, I stood on the sidewalk and watched the Austin sun hit those letters, and the light cast the name across the floor inside like a shadow in reverse. That was the month Marcus proposed properly. We'd been engaged since before the wedding. That quiet Tuesday night proposal in Hartford felt like another lifetime. But we'd never had a ceremony. He took me to a rooftop bar on Congress Bridge at dusk, right when the bats begin their nightly migration. 1 million of them spiraling into the pink sky. And he said, "We should make this official, not for anyone else. For us." We got married at the Travis County Courthouse on a Wednesday. 15 guests. Lorraine was there, in her navy blazer. Denise brought a cake she'd baked at the coffee shop. No Vera Wang, no imported orchids, no $250,000 budget, a $90 filing fee, and a promise. 2 weeks later, an email from the Austin Business Journal. "Ms. Hewitt, you've been nominated for our annual 40 Under 40 list. Would you be available for an interview?" I said yes, I had no idea who else would be in Austin by the time they held the ceremony. Meredith moved to Austin in October. Not by choice. Trent had been offered a position at a hospital system affiliated with UT Southwestern. Offered was the word Meredith used. I later learned the truth was less flattering. His department in Hartford had encouraged a transition after an HR complaint from a colleague. The details didn't reach me then. They didn't need to. The result was the same. Dr. Trent Cole was relocating to Texas, and Meredith was following. They sold the Colonial in West Hartford. The house my parents had gift-wrapped with $250,000 closed at a $65,000 loss. The Connecticut market had softened steadily since they'd bought, and they'd financed the rest at a rate that aged poorly. By the time the closing check cleared and the realtor took her cut, Meredith and Trent walked away with almost nothing, $250,000. Gone. Not stolen, not gambled, just slowly, quietly dissolved by a market that didn't care about wedding gifts or parental promises. Meredith didn't know I was in Austin. I had no public social media under my personal name. Hewitt Creative had a website and a business Instagram, but Meredith wouldn't have been looking for a marketing agency. Our worlds didn't overlap. Or so I thought. The overlap happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Diane had flown in from Connecticut to help Meredith settle into their new rental. The three of them, Diane, Meredith, Trent, were driving south on Congress Avenue when Meredith pointed out the window. "That's a cute office space." Diane looked up, saw the glass door, saw the name, Hewitt Creative. She didn't speak. She picked up her phone, Googled, found the website, saw my photo on the About page. Sienna Hewitt, founder and CEO. She set the phone in her lap, said nothing. My mother saw my name on that glass door, and for the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. The Austin Business Journal 40 Under 40 Gala was held on a Thursday evening in November at the JW Marriott downtown. The rooftop terrace, 34 floors up, the skyline of Austin glowing below like a circuit board. 400 guests. Founders, investors, tech executives, hospital administrators, city council members. Open bar. A jazz trio. Name tags printed on heavy cardstock that felt like an invitation just to hold. I wore red. Not bright red. Deep, arterial red. A tailored blazer I'd had made by a seamstress on South First Street, the first piece of clothing I'd ever had custom fitted. Underneath, a simple black silk blouse. My hair pulled back in a clean, low bun, red lipstick to match the blazer. Marcus was beside me in a navy suit, the first one he'd ever owned that wasn't rented. Lorraine had picked the tie. Charcoal, slim, no pattern. "You want them to remember your face?" she'd told him. "Not your tie." We arrived at 7, checked in, found our table. Number 3, front section. A year ago, I'd been at table 14 by the service door. The math of that wasn't lost on me. Lorraine was already seated at the VIP table, speaking to the editor-in-chief of the Austin Business Journal the way she spoke to everyone. Like she was running a board meeting no one had called. What I didn't know, as I adjusted my blazer and scanned the room, was that 6 tables behind me, back section near the bar, Trent Cole was settling into a chair. The hospital system that had recruited him was a platinum sponsor of the event. He'd received an invitation through the medical staff liaison. Meredith was in the chair beside him, and Diane, who'd extended her trip to help Meredith unpack boxes, sat between them, her champagne-colored blouse the same shade she'd worn to Meredith's wedding. The MC stepped up to the podium. The room quieted, and the names began. They called the names alphabetically by last name. I listened to the letters climb: Dawson, Espinoza, Gutierrez. Each honoree walked to the stage, shook the MC's hand, received a Crystal Award, said a few words. The audience clapped politely. Cameras flashed. Then the MC leaned into the microphone. Next, founder and CEO of Hewitt Creative, one of Austin's fastest-growing hospitality marketing firms, with revenue exceeding $2.1 million in year 2, Sienna Hewitt. 400 people applauded. I stood. My legs were steady. My hands were steady. 2 years ago, those hands had been gripping a $500 check in a Ritz-Carlton ballroom. Tonight they were smoothing the front of a red blazer that fit like it had been waiting for me. I walked to the stage. The spotlight was warm. The Crystal Award was heavier than it looked. 6 tables back, near the bar, my mother's champagne flute stopped halfway to her lips. Meredith turned to Diane. "Wait. Hewitt Creative? Is that—" Diane didn't answer. I stood at the microphone. I didn't look for them. I didn't need to. 2 years ago, I drove to Austin with $4,200 and a Honda Civic. My voice was clear. 400 faces looked up. I didn't have a backup plan. I had a partner who believed in me, a mentor who challenged me, and a decision to stop waiting for permission to build my own life. I paused. Let the room hold it. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you build. The applause was louder this time. Marcus was on his feet. Lorraine was nodding from the VIP table with the smallest smile, the kind she reserved for things that met her standard. I walked back to table 3, and as I sat, my eyes drifted across the room, across the 400 faces and the candlelight and the skyline, and landed, for 1 second, on my mother. She was looking at me. I held her gaze. I nodded. Once, small, the way you acknowledge someone you recognize but haven't spoken to in a long time. Then I turned back to Marcus, and I let the evening continue without her. I heard what happened next from Aunt Patricia, who heard it from Gerald, who was home in Connecticut but received a phone call from Diane at 10:47 that night. The story traveled the way all Hewitt stories travel, through the family telephone line, quietly, with just enough detail to wound. The gala ended at 10. Meredith and Diane walked to the parking garage in silence while Trent stayed behind to network. Or whatever Trent called what he did when his wife wasn't watching. The parking garage was underground. Concrete walls. Fluorescent lights humming. No chandeliers. No string quartets. No Instagram filter that could soften what was about to happen. Meredith sat in the driver's seat of her BMW. The X5 that was now 5 years old, a scratch along the rear quarter panel she hadn't bothered to fix. And she didn't start the engine. She stared at the steering wheel. She built a company, Mom. Her voice cracked on the word company. A real company. People stood up for her. 400 people clapped. She got lucky, Diane said. Automatic, reflexive. The same script she'd been running for 30 years. Lucky? Meredith's head snapped toward her mother. We got $250,000 and I can't sell a house without losing money. Trent won't answer my calls after 9 p.m. I moved to a city where I don't know anyone. And she stood on that stage and she had everything. Her voice broke open. Mom, why don't I have that? The fluorescent light buzzed. Diane looked at her hands. Her nails were perfect. They were always perfect. But her hands were still. I did what I thought was best, she said. For who? Meredith whispered. The engine didn't start for a long time. 3 days after the gala, an email arrived. Not a text. Not a voicemail. An email. Because Gerald Hewitt was the kind of man who needed the structure of paragraphs to say what he couldn't manage out loud. Sienna, someone posted a clip of your speech online. I've watched it 11 times. I counted because your mother would say I'm exaggerating and I want to be precise for once. I should have stood up for you at the wedding. I should have said something when your mother handed you that envelope. I should have stood up for you your whole life. Every Thanksgiving, every phone call, every time she compared you to Meredith and I sat there eating my dinner like a coward. That's what I was. I want to name it, because I think you deserve to hear me say it. I won't ask you to forgive me. I'll ask you to let me try to be better. If you ever want to have coffee, I'll fly to Austin. No conditions, no agenda. Just your dad, being late to the only conversation that matters. I love you. I always did. I was just too quiet about it. Dad, I read it at my desk in the East 6th Street office. Morning light coming through the glass door. The shadow of Hewitt Creative stretched across the concrete floor. I read it once. Then again. Then I closed my laptop and pressed my hands flat against the desk and breathed. I cried. Not the bathroom floor kind, like in May. This was different. This was the kind of crying that happens when something you stopped hoping for arrives anyway. Late, imperfect, but real. I replied that evening, "I'd like that, but coffee only. And we go slow." Gerald booked a flight to Austin that same night. Later, in a follow-up email, he wrote one more line. "Your mother has been quiet since the gala. She hasn't said your name." I think, for the first time, she heard herself. 2 weeks after the gala, Meredith's life completed its collapse. Not with a bang, but with an iPad left on a kitchen counter. The details came to me in pieces, again through Patricia, who seemed to have become the family's unofficial wire service. Trent had been seeing a nurse practitioner at the hospital. Not a rumor, not a suspicion, but a chain of iMessages that synced to the iPad he'd left charging next to the coffee maker. Meredith opened it looking for a recipe app. She found 6 months of conversations instead. She filed for legal separation the following week. Texas is a community property state, which meant the house, their Austin rental wasn't the issue. It was the financial wreckage left from selling the Connecticut house. The remaining mortgage, the credit lines, the car payments, all had to be split. Attorney retainer, $15,000. Money Meredith didn't have in liquid cash because her dermatology license hadn't transferred to Texas yet, and Trent had been the primary earner since they'd moved. She called Diane first. "Mom, I need help. Can you and Dad—" "We already gave you $250,000, Meredith. We don't have more. Your father is retiring. We have our own expenses." The same mother who'd funded a $250,000 wedding couldn't fund a divorce. Or wouldn't. Either way, the vault was closed. Then Meredith called me. I didn't answer. I was in a client meeting. An honest reason, though I'm not sure I would have picked up regardless. Her voicemail sat in my phone for 3 hours before I listened. "Sienna, it's Meredith. I know I don't deserve this call, but I don't know who else to call." I sat with it. Marcus found me on the couch that evening, phone in my lap, staring at nothing. "I'm not going to rescue her," I said. "But I'm not going to gloat either." Marcus nodded. "That's the right line." It was, and I held it. 1 month after the gala, Hewitt Creative signed its largest contract, a full rebrand for a chain of 8 boutique hotels across the Texas Hill Country. Website, social media, email marketing, photography direction, the works. Contract value, $340,000, phased over 12 months. The Austin Business Journal ran a feature. The headline, "How Sienna Hewitt Built a $2 million Agency in 2 Years Without a Dollar from Anyone." The journalist, a woman named Rachel who'd been at the 40 Under 40 gala, asked me about my background. I told her the truth, minus the names. I said I'd come from a family that didn't believe in my career path. She wrote it as, Hewitt launched Hewitt Creative with no outside investment, no family backing, and no safety net, just a laptop and a conviction that her work had value. That same month, we placed a billboard on Congress Avenue, standard advertising, part of a campaign to attract new hospitality clients. The design was simple. Hewitt Creative's logo, a photograph of a hotel lobby we'd rebranded, and the tagline, "Your Story." Told right. I approve the placement for business reasons, but I won't pretend I didn't notice that the billboard stood 6 blocks from Meredith's rental apartment, on the route she drove every day to the temporary clinic where she'd started consulting. Sometimes I wonder, if my mother had given me $250,000 instead of $500, would I be here? Would I have moved to Austin? Would I have registered an LLC on a kitchen table with $700 left in my account? Or would I have settled into something safe and never learned what I was capable of? I don't know the answer, but I think the fire matters more than the money. What do you think? Do the worst things that happen to us sometimes become the best? I'd love to hear your take in the comments. I didn't put that billboard up for my mother, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile when I drove past it. Gerald made it happen. He called it coffee, and he meant it literally. No family meeting, no therapy session, no ambush. Just a table at a shop on South Congress, 4 blocks from where I'd once poured lattes for $12 an hour. I arrived first, ordered a black coffee, sat in the chair facing the door because I'd learned in 2 years to see what was coming. Diane walked in at exactly 10 o'clock. Her hair was grayer than I remembered, the ash blonde now silver at the temples. She wore a Burberry trench coat over a white blouse, but her handbag was old. The same Coach bag she'd been carrying for 5 years. Something about the combination told me everything. The armor was the same, but the resources behind it had thinned. She sat down, ordered green tea, wrapped her hands around the mug like she needed something to hold. "You look well," she said. "I am well." Silence. The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. A woman at the next table was reading a novel and pretending not to listen. "I didn't think you could do it," my mother said. Not cruel this time, just honest. Maybe for the first time. I know. Maybe I was wrong. I let those 4 words hang. They were the most she'd ever given me that wasn't wrapped in a condition. "You were," I said. "But I didn't build my company to prove you wrong. I built it because I needed to prove something to myself." I took a breath. "I don't need an apology, Mom. I need you to stop telling people I left out of jealousy. That's the minimum." She nodded. Her eyes reddened. Not tears, not quite, but the closest I'd ever seen Diane Hewitt come to the border. "If you want to know me, the real me, you can start by having coffee with me once a month. But you don't get to rank your daughters anymore. That system is over." 2 cups on a wooden table. Same size, same saucer. No one's bigger. 6 months after that coffee shop, the scoreboard looked like this. Diane and I had met 4 times. Always coffee. Always the same shop on South Congress. The conversations were short. 30 minutes, sometimes 40. She asked about the business. I told her what I felt like sharing. She didn't compare me to Meredith. Not once. I don't know if she'd changed or if she was simply performing change, and I'd decided that wasn't my problem to solve. My job was to hold the boundary. Her job was to respect it. Gerald flew to Austin in January. He sat at a picnic table at Franklin Barbecue with Marcus and me, a tray of brisket on brown paper between us, and he cried. Not dramatically. Gerald doesn't do anything dramatically, but quietly, his shoulders shaking, his napkin pressed against his eyes. "I'm proud of you," he said. I should have been saying that for 28 years. I reached across the paper and held his hand. Marcus put a brisket rib on his plate and said, "Eat, Gerald. It's better when it's warm." My father laughed through his tears. It was the best meal I'd had in Austin. Meredith's divorce was finalized in March. She sold what little remained of the joint assets, absorbed the $65,000 housing loss, and moved into a small apartment in East Austin, 800 square feet, no marble countertops, no wolf range. She was consulting at a dermatology clinic 3 days a week while waiting for her Texas license to clear. For the first time in her life, she was paying her own electricity bill. She texted me in April. "I'm sorry for what I said at the wedding, and for the Instagram post. I was protecting something that was never real." I replied the next morning, "I know. If you want to get coffee sometime, let me know." No hug, no tearful reunion. Just 2 sisters for the first time, on level ground. It's a Tuesday morning. I'm standing in the Hewitt Creative office. 1,500 square feet now, expanded into the suite next door. 6 employees, 2 conference rooms. A wall of framed client work that Becca calls the gallery. Morning light comes through the glass front door, and the logo casts its shadow across the polished concrete the way it did that first morning. Except now there are more desks, more chairs, more evidence that something I once dreamed about on an air mattress became real. On the wall behind my desk, 3 things are pinned. The LLC certificate from the Texas Secretary of State, dated 2 years ago, a little creased at the corners, the $1,750 check from Derek. The first client who canceled, the first real payment, the first real lesson. Still has my Sharpie note beside it. First real payment. First real lesson. And the Crystal Award from the Austin Business Journal's 40 Under 40. It catches the light every afternoon around 4 and throws small rainbows across the filing cabinet. Becca says it's the office's best feature. I think she's right. The $500 check is not on the wall. I tore it up a long time ago. I don't need to keep evidence of what someone thought I was worth. I keep evidence of what I built. Marcus walks in with 2 coffees. One black, one with oat milk. He sets mine on the desk, kisses the top of my head, and sits in the chair across from me. We look out the window at Congress Avenue. The billboard is still there. Your story. Told right. And below it, Austin moves the way it always does. Fast, bright, indifferent to who you were before you got here. My mother gave me $500 and told me that was all I deserved. She was right about one thing. I did deserve exactly what I got. Not the $500. The fire. Some people inherit their legacy. I built mine. And I built it with the 2 things my parents never gave me: belief and a fair chance. That's my story. If you've ever been the other one in your family, the one who wasn't the favorite, who wasn't the investment, I want you to know something. Your value doesn't come from their approval. It comes from what you build when no one's watching. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and leave a comment. I read every single one. And if you want another story about someone who turned their family's doubt into fuel, check the link in the description. I'll see you in the next one.